The sea wind carried with it the scent of salt and the echoes of long-forgotten songs as the white ship cut through the waves, bearing its honored passengers westward. Among them stood Gimli, son of Glóin, his stout frame dwarfed by the tall, gliding figures of the elves, and his keen eyes drinking in the vast horizon before him. He, a dwarf of Durin's folk, had been granted passage to the Undying Lands, a fate no other of his kind had ever known. To understand the weight of this moment, one must trace Gimli's journey from the halls of Erebor to this final voyage upon the straight road. His deeds in the War of the Ring were known across Middle-earth, his axe hewing through orcs at Helm's Deep and Pelennor fields alike. But it was not his prowess in battle that had earned him this passage. It was love and friendship, bonds woven with such strength that even the laws of the Valar seemed to yield before them. It was in the golden woods of Lothlorien in 3019 of the Third Age that fate took an unexpected turn. Gimli, with all the wariness of his people, had entered the realm of Galadriel expecting only coldness and distrust. Instead, he found grace beyond mortal measure. She, the Lady of the Galadrim, looked upon him not with scorn, but with understanding, and her words awakened in him a reverence that defied the old enmities of dwarf and elf. "Dark is the water of Keled Zaram," she had said, "and fair were the towers of Moria in elder days." In that moment, the rift between their people seemed less a chasm and more a wound, one that might yet heal. His friendship with Legolas, son of Thranduil, was another marvel. What began as rivalry in the halls of Rivendell grew into a brotherhood that carried them through the horrors of war and beyond. Together they had journeyed into Fangorn, stood upon the walls of Helm's Deep, and walked the paths of the dead. And together they had made a promise to sail beyond Middle-earth when the time came, to see the wonders of the blessed realm with their own eyes. But such a promise was not easily fulfilled. The Undying Lands were barred to mortals, and dwarves, though not bound by the same doom as men, were nonetheless of Arda and its deep places. No dwarf had ever set foot in Aman, nor had any sought to do so. Yet, when Legolas at last built his grey ship and prepared to leave the fading world behind, he would not go without his dearest friend. And so, Gimli, son of Glóin, was granted passage, not for the sake of his own fate, but as a final gift to one whose heart had been unshaken in love and loyalty. As stated in The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King, in the final pages of the Red Book's records, it is said that Gimli went with Legolas into the West, the last of the Fellowship to depart. Some believe he was permitted entry because of Galadriel's intercession, for no dwarf had ever revered her as he had. Others claim it was the strength of his bond with Legolas, a testament to an unbreakable friendship that transcended the old divisions of their peoples. And so on. Whatever the truth, he went. And with him, the firstborn of Durin's line vanished from the annals of Middle-earth. The ship sailed on, the light upon the water growing ever more golden. Gimli, though long accustomed to the deep places of stone, felt no fear of the open sea. For the first time, he was setting foot upon a journey unmarked by maps, a path unknown even to the lore-masters of his kin. What awaited him in Valinor was beyond mortal telling. Would he be granted audience with Aule, the maker of his kind? Would he walk among the groves of Yavanna, where trees grew untouched by time? None could say. But in that moment, with the wind in his beard and the laughter of his friend beside him, none of it mattered. He had crossed the last threshold, beyond the reach of war, beyond the sorrow of sundered lands. The sea had accepted him, and so too, it seemed, had the West. And so the white ship sailed ever onward, the mists of Middle-earth falling away behind them like the fading echoes of an old song. For those who remained in the mortal lands, the passing of Gimli, son of Glóin, became the stuff of legend, a tale whispered among dwarves and elves alike. Yet none could truly say what awaited him beyond the circles of the world, save those who had made the journey before him. The Undying Lands were a realm of wonder, where the very air was said to be laden with a light beyond the reckoning of mortal eyes. For the elves it was a homecoming, a return to the lands they had once departed in sorrow. But for Gimli, it was a place of mysteries, a land that no dwarf had ever set foot upon, nor even dreamed of seeing. Would the mountains of a man call to him, as the peaks of the misty mountains once had? Would the earth of that hallowed land welcome one of Durin's folk, whose people had ever dwelt in the deep places of the world? It was said among the Eldar that Aule, the Vala who had shaped the dwarves in the dark of the world's youth, had long grieved for the sundered fate of his children. Though they were not counted among the firstborn, nor bound to the doom of men, they were still dear to him, crafted with the skill of his own hands. Perhaps it was by Aule's will that the gates of Valinor were opened to Gimli, a final acknowledgement that the children of Mahal, as the dwarves called him, were not forgotten in the grand design of Arda. And what of Galadriel, the Lady of Lorien, whose light had once inspired a love in Gimli unlike any other? It was she, more than any other, who might have pleaded his cause before the Valar. If ever there was a dwarf who could set aside the quarrels of old and be welcomed among the firstborn, it was he. And so, if he was indeed permitted to dwell in Aman, what then? Did he wander the fair fields of Valinor, or did he seek out the halls of Aule, finding at last a place where the works of stone and metal were not touched by the decay of the world? No tale tells of what became of Gimli in the West. It is a mystery, left unspoken in the annals of elves and men alike. Yet, there are those who say that he did not seek to linger in the gardens and forests of the elves, where the trees whispered in tongues unknown to dwarven ears. Instead, he went to the halls of Aili the smith, where the forges burned ever bright, and the shaping of things was done in beauty unmarred by time. There, some say, he labored at the side of his maker, learning crafts beyond the wisdom of the dwarves of Middle-earth, forging wonders that no mortal eye would ever see. Perhaps, in the quiet of Valinor, he was given one last gift, a chance to look upon the light of the two trees, the long-lost radiance that had been captured in Galadriel's Fial. If such a thing were true, then it would mean that he, alone among his people, had glimpsed a beauty that even the greatest of dwarven kings had never known. A strange fate for a son of Duirin, yet fitting, for he had been unlike any other of his kind. The years passed, and in Middle-earth the memory of Gimli, son of Glóin, faded into legend. The glittering caves which he had once ruled became places of wonder, filled with halls of stone carved in the manner of the elves. The dwarves of Erebor and Aglaron spoke of him with reverence, the elf friend who had crossed the sea, the elf friend who had walked the lands of the Valar. And in time, even that memory was lost, as all things in Arda must be. But perhaps beyond the confines of the world, in a place untouched by shadow or sorrow, he still walks among the halls of Aule, forging wonders in the light of the Undying Lands. Or perhaps he rests now in peace, his heart content at last, having seen a beauty that no other of his people had ever beheld. One thing alone is certain. Gimli, son of Glóin, did not pass into the darkness that waits for all things of Middle-earth. He sailed into the light, into a land beyond the reach of time, where neither axe nor stone would ever wear away. And if the songs of the elves speak true, then he is there still, the last of the fellowship, and the first of his kind, to walk a road that no other dwarf had ever dared to dream of. And so the tale of Gimli, son of Glóin, passed into legend, a story carried upon the tongues of dwarves and elves alike, though neither race could say with certainty what fate had befallen him beyond the sea. In the deep halls of Erebor the fires still burned in the forges, and the songs of Durin's folk still echoed against the stone, yet none among them could claim to know the full truth of their kinsman's final journey. Some believed he had perished upon the waves, his dwarven soul unable to withstand the call of a land not meant for his kind. Others held to the hope that Aule himself had welcomed him into his halls, granting him a place among those who shaped the very bones of the world. In Gondor, where the line of Elisar ruled long and well, the scribes recorded the passage of the last of the fellowship in the annals of the realm. In 120 of the Fourth Age, when Legolas, prince of the woodland realm, at last built his ship and departed from the shores of Middle-earth, it was said that Gimli went with him. And with that departure an age truly ended. Those who remained, the men of the West, could only wonder at what lay beyond the western horizon, where the straight road led beyond the reach of time. But if the truth of Gimli's fate was unknown to mortals, what of those who had sailed before? It is said that when his feet first touched the hallowed shores of Aman, the light of that land fell upon him, and he beheld a radiance beyond any craft of stone or metal. The air itself shimmered with an undying glow, the distant peaks of the Pelori rising like sentinels crowned with silver and gold, and before him stood the fair folk of the West, those whom the world had long thought lost, the High Elves who had never returned to Middle-earth, their eyes filled with an ancient wisdom that even Galadriel had not possessed in the mortal lands. It was not an easy thing to be the first of his kind to stand among them, a dwarf among the Eldar in a land where no shadow could tread. Yet Gimli was no mere wanderer. He had come not in defiance, but as one honored among the firstborn, a guest of the Lady Galadriel, a friend to Legolas, a warrior of the Fellowship that had saved Middle-earth from ruin. And if the elves looked upon him with wonder, they did not deny him welcome. Among the fair cities of Aman, it is said that he walked in Valmar, the city of the Valar, where bells rang clear as crystal and streets were paved with white stone. And in time he came before the halls of Auli the smith. There perhaps his greatest joy was found, for here was the Maker himself, the Valar who had shaped his people from the stone, the one whom the dwarves called Maba. What words passed between them no tale recounts, for such things were not written in the records of elves or men. But it is believed that Aule received him gladly, as a father might welcome a long-lost child. And what then? Did Gimli labor in those forges, shaping wonders beyond the craft of Middle-earth? Did he learn secrets of stone and metal that no dwarf before him had ever known? It may be that he did, and that he became a legend even among the artisans of Aman, his skill praised in song by the very beings who had once shaped the world itself. Or perhaps in time he wearied of all things, as all creatures must, even in the Undying Lands. For though he had been granted passage, he was not of the firstborn. He was still a child of Middle-earth, bound to its fate. And so, when his days at last came to an end, did he pass beyond the circles of the world, to a fate unknown even to the wisest of the Valar? None can say. But there are those who believe that he rests still, deep in the halls of Aule, where the forges burn bright and the sound of hammers upon anvils never ceases. And if that is true, then perhaps he is not alone. For one can imagine that, even in the West, there are times when an elf lord of the woodland realm might leave the fair forests of Eldamar and seek out an old friend, to sit beside him in the glow of the forge, speaking of days long past, when the world was younger and the mountains of Middle-earth still echoed with the laughter of the last dwarf to sail the sea. And so ends the tale of Gimli, son of Gloin, the first and last of his kind to walk upon the shores of Aman. His fate is a mystery, his deeds a legend, but one truth remains unshaken. In love, in friendship, and in honor, he crossed the final threshold, leaving behind the lands of shadow to dwell forever in the light.